Hello, I'm American Johnson. This is Non-Compete, and these are amazing times that we're living in. 2020 is working out to be the most exciting, scary, terrifying, exhilarating, hopeful, daunting year of my life, and history is happening very fast right before our eyes. Of course, right now, protests, uprisings, revolts are occurring in over 30 major cities in the USA, probably far more than that by the time you're watching this, assuming things continue as they have been. I've been watching the live footage of these uprisings. I don't call them riots because I feel like these are politically motivated uprisings. These are actions that are long past due. We have people in the streets shouting for revolution, people in the states shouting for the dismantling of the police system in the United States of America. We're seeing amazing things. We're seeing things that Kropotkin talked about in The Conquest of Bread that I've talked about on this channel many times. We're seeing footage of people outside of Target, in the parking lots of Targets in these cities like Minneapolis, where they are essentially building free stores and handing out supplies and food and stuff to people for free, which is, exactly what Kropotkin outlined in The Conquest of Bread. Just provide bread to the people. We see people in the front of Walgreens and other such stores throwing out diapers to the crowd and other essential items. It's amazing, and I am inspired. And I wanted to talk about it, but it just feels weird for me to be talking about it. I don't feel like I have much that I can say. I think that these protesters, these demonstrators, these revolutionaries have been doing a good job leading themselves. They've been doing amazing things. I don't know what they would need from me except for encouragement and donations, which we'll talk about at the end of this video. So rather than me sit here and pontificate with my thoughts, I thought it would be more useful to go back in history and find some words from people who were revolutionaries at different times and share their words of inspiration and advice to all of you. Because I know there are a lot of people who watch this channel, a lot of people that I'm in contact with who are out on the streets. And maybe you have a little downtime to watch this video. If so, I hope you find some meaning in these words. If you're not out on the streets, that's fine. From each according to their ability, to each according to their needs, that sort of thing. But I think we all need to be standing together right now in solidarity and contributing as we are able to this remarkable activity. And I hope that we can keep the momentum going, because as we'll learn from some of these people from history, you have to keep momentum going in a situation like this. But yeah, I think that's all I've really got to say. Let's just jump right in now to some of these texts. And then later on, as we move through history, I'll also try to show you actual video of these people speaking for themselves as much as possible. But first, let's begin with Ho Chi Minh, Uncle Ho, in Vietnam, where I live. This was written in 1946. This was when Vietnam was in a very trying time. And Uncle Ho was calling on Vietnamese people across the country to rise up in resistance war. A peace treaty had just been signed between France and Vietnam, but France was continuously violating this peace treaty. And so Ho Chi Minh called for the people to rise up in resistance. And this is what Uncle Ho had to say in 1946. Compatriots throughout the country, out of love for peace, we have made concessions. But the more concessions we made, the further the French colonialists went, because they are resolved to invade our country once again. No, we would rather sacrifice everything than lose our country than return to slavery. Compatriots, rise up. Men and women, old and young, regardless of creeds, political parties, or nationalities, all the Vietnamese must stand up to fight the French colonialists to save the fatherland. Those who have rifles will use their rifles. Those who have swords will use their swords. Those who have no swords will use their spades, hoes, and sticks. Everyone must endeavor to oppose the colonialists and save his country. Soldiers, self-defense guards, militiamen. The hour of national liberation has struck. We must sacrifice to our last drop of blood to save our country. Whatever hardships we must endure, we are ready to endure them. With the determination to sacrifice, victory will be ours. Long live an independent and unified Vietnam. Long live the victorious resistance. It's a short piece, but it has lasted through the decades and inspired Vietnamese people for a long time. The line about, those who are without guns use their swords. Those who are without swords use sticks. That's a powerful and very famous phrase here in Vietnam that Vietnamese people remember very well. I also want to talk a little bit about the destructive aspect of the uprisings we're seeing in Minneapolis and LA and many other countries. A lot of people are saying that the destruction of property is unwarranted and uncalled for. I would never recommend that anybody do anything that's illegal, because that would violate the terms of service of YouTube. So don't do anything that's illegal. But here's something that Ho Chi Minh wrote around the same time in the 1940s about destructive resistance war against oppression. So as a matter of historical documentation, I will now read this piece: Appeal to Compatriots to Carry Out Destruction to Wage Resistance War, 1947, by Ho Chi Minh. Compatriots who love our country, why must we wage the resistance war? Because if we do not wage the resistance war, the French will occupy our country once more. They will enslave our people once more. They will force our people to be their coolies and soldiers and to pay them every kind of taxes. They will suppress all our democratic freedoms. They will plunder all our land and property. They will terrorize and massacre our brothers, sisters, and relatives. They will burn down or destroy our houses, pagodas, and temples. You will realize this by seeing what they have done in Hanoi and Haiphong. Because we do not want to be buffaloes and horses to the French, because we must protect our country, we must fight the French colonialists. To fight, we must carry out destruction. If we do not do so, the French will. If our houses are solid enough to be used as bases, they will mobilize tanks and vessels to attack us, and they will burn or plunder all our property. This is why we must carry out destruction before the French can make use of our property. Suppose we want to keep sluices, roads, and houses for our own use. We can't, because the French will occupy all or destroy all. Now we must carry out destruction to stop them, to prevent them from advancing and from using our roads and houses. For the sake of the fatherland, we must make sacrifices and endure hardships for a certain time. When the resistance comes out victorious, we will pool our resources for construction and repair work, and this will all not be difficult at all. On the battlefront, the fighters are sacrificing their lives for the fatherland without regret. Why do we regret a section of road, a sluice, or a house which the French can use to attack our fatherland? You all love your country. No doubt you will have no heart to regret so. Therefore, I earnestly call on you to exert all your effort to carry out destruction work. We must destroy roads widely and deeply so that the French cannot use them. A pick stroke into the roads has the value of a bullet shot by our soldiers at the enemy. I solemnly promise to you that after victory, I will endeavor to repair everything with you. We will build more beautiful roads, bridges, and sluices, and better houses worthy of a free and independent nation. Long live our victorious resistance war. Long live independent Vietnam. It just seems to make sense now to read a piece by Che Guevara called Mobilizing the Masses for Invasion. These are excerpts. This isn't the full document. And there are links to all of these in the description, of course, if you want to read these in full. That is why the imperialists do not resign themselves, because this is a struggle to the death. That is why we cannot take one backward step, because the first time we retreat a step would mean the beginning of a long chain for us too, and we would end up the same way as with all the false leaders and all the people who at a particular moment of history did not measure up to the task of withstanding the drive of the empire. That is why we must move forward, striking out tirelessly against imperialism. Imperialism must be struck on the snout once and then again, in the infinite succession of blows and counterblows. That is the only way people can win their real independence. Never a step backward, never a moment of weakness, and every time circumstances might tempt us to think that the situation might be better if we were not fighting against the empire, let each one of us think of the long chain of tortures and deaths through which the Cuban people had to pass to win their independence. Let all of us think of the eviction of peasants, the murder of workers, the strikes broken by the police, of all these kinds of class oppression which have now completely disappeared from Cuba. And further, let us understand well how victory is won by preparing the people, by enhancing the revolutionary consciousness and establishing unity, by meeting each and every attempt at aggression with our rifles out in front. That is how it is won. So we're starting to see some themes emerge now. Ho Chi Minh was talking about making sacrifices, and Che Guevara also talks about how we need to make sacrifices, be prepared for the long haul, and not take a single step backward. And I think that's important for us to try to spread that message to all of our comrades around the world who are protesting and rising up right now. It's not just happening in the USA, by the way. Of course, things are happening in a lot of places. Japan, of all places, has been having protests over police brutality and racism. But yeah, we can't take a step backward. I think that's important to remember. Every time we take downtime, that's time for the police to gear up. They're already using things like Predator drones. They're using, military equipment. And, if we give them downtime right now, of course, the first thing they're going to do is start putting more cops in the streets. Chicago Police Department has already announced that next month they're going to start adding 100 officers. They're going to take them off their desk assignments, basically, and put them out on the streets. So, of course, that's what they would do. Chicago would respond to problems with police brutality by taking poorly trained officers and dumping them out on the streets. But this is going to happen across the USA. So we just have to keep the momentum going. We have to keep the pressure applied. I think that's very, very important. And if you can't be out on the streets like me, I'm in Vietnam. I'm stuck on the other side of the planet. So and there are a lot of people who have disabilities or other reasons why they can't just go out in the streets and participate physically in person. In that case, it's very important that we donate to mutual aid funds so that we can get people bail money when they need it, hospital bills taken care of, that sort of thing. There will be a lot of links in the description of this video to mutual aid organizations across the country. I've said before, I'm very impressed with the self-organization of these uprisings, but I do hope that it starts to crystallize into a real politically, ideologically motivated movement to build something new. And if you're looking for a guidebook or a manual for this kind of very early stage revolutionary activity when things are really just starting to go down, the book that I always turn to for wisdom and information on this is The Conquest of Bread by Pyotr Kropotkin. This is a wonderfully written book that I reference a lot on my channel, and here are some excerpts that I think are very relevant to the times we're in right now. We've all been studying the dramatic side of revolution so much, and the practical work of revolution so little, that we are apt to see only the stage effects, so to speak, of these great movements. The fight of the first days, the barricades. But this fight, this first skirmish, is soon ended, and it is only after the overthrow of the old constitution that the real work of revolution can be said to begin. Effete and powerless, attacked on all sides, the old rulers are soon swept away by the breath of insurrection. Before a popular revolution, the masters of the old order disappear with a surprising rapidity. Its upholders fly the country to plot in safety elsewhere and to devise measures for their return. The former government having disappeared, the army, hesitating before the tide of popular opinion, no longer obeys its commanders, who have also prudently decamped. The troops stand by without interfering or join the rebels. The police, standing at ease, are uncertain whether to belabor the crowd or to cry, "Long live the commune," while some retire to their quarters to await the pleasure of the new government. Wealthy citizens pack their trunks and betake themselves to places of safety. The people remain. This is how a revolution is ushered in. In several large towns, the commune is proclaimed. In the streets wander thousands of men who in the evening crowd into improvised clubs asking, "What shall we do?" and ardently discuss public affairs in which all take an interest. Those who yesterday were most indifferent are perhaps the most zealous. Everywhere there is plenty of goodwill and a keen desire to make victory certain. It is a time of supreme devotion. The people are ready to go forward. All this is splendid, sublime, but still it is not a revolution. Nay, it is only now that the work of the revolutionist begins. Doubtless the thirst for vengeance will be satisfied. The Watrons and the Thomases will pay the penalty of their unpopularity, but that is only an incident of the struggle and not a revolution. Socialist politicians, radicals, neglected geniuses of journalism, stump orators, middle-class citizens, and workmen hurry to the town hall, to the government offices, and take possession of the vacant seats. Some rejoice their hearts with galloon, admire themselves in ministerial mirrors, and study to give them orders with an air of importance appropriate to their new position. They must have a red sash, an embroidered cap, and magisterial gestures to impress their comrades of the office or the workshop. Others bury themselves in official papers, trying with the best of wills to make head or tail of them. They indict laws and issue high-flown worded decrees that nobody takes the trouble to carry out because the revolution has come. To give themselves an authority which is lacking, they seek the sanction of old forms of government. They take the names of provisional government, committee of public safety, mayor, governor of the town hall, commissioner of public weal, and whatnot. Elected or acclaimed, they assemble in boards or in communal councils. These bodies include men of 10 or 20 different schools, which, if not exactly private chapels, are at least so many sects which represent as many ways of regarding the scope, the bearing, and the goal of the revolution. Possibilists, collectivists, radicals, Jacobins, blankists are thrust together and waste time in wordy warfare. Honest men come into contact with ambitious ones whose only dream is power and who spurn the crowd whence they sprung. Coming together with diametrically opposed views, they are forced to form arbitrary alliances in order to create majorities that can but last a day. Wrangling, calling each other reactionaries, authoritarians, and rascals, incapable of coming to an understanding on any serious measure, dragged into discussions about trifles, producing nothing better than bombastic proclamations, yet taking themselves seriously, unwitting that the real strength of the movement is in the streets. All this may please those who like the theater, but it is not revolution. Nothing yet has been accomplished. Meanwhile, the people suffer. The factories are idle, the workshops closed, industry is at a standstill, the worker does not even earn the meager wage which was his before. Food goes up in price. With that heroic devotion which has always characterized them, and which in great crises reaches the sublime, the people wait patiently. We place these 3 months of want at the service of the Republic, they said in 1848, while their representatives and the gentlemen of the new government, down to the meanest jack in office, received their salary regularly. The people suffer. With childlike faith, with the good humor of the masses who believe in their leaders, they think that yonder, in the House, in the Town Hall, in the Committee of Public Safety, their welfare is being considered. But yonder, they are discussing everything under the sun except the welfare of the people. In 1793, while famine ravaged France and crippled the revolution, whilst the people were reduced to the depths of misery, whilst the Champs-Élysées were lined with luxurious carriages where women displayed their jewels and splendor, Robespierre was urging the Jacobins to discuss his treatise on the English Constitution. While the worker was suffering in 1848 from the general stoppage of trade, the provisional government and the House were wrangling over military pensions and prison labor without troubling how the people were to live during this crisis. And could one cast a reproach at the Paris Commune, which was born beneath the Prussian cannon and lasted only 70 days? It would be for this same error, this failure to understand that the revolution could not triumph unless those who fought on its side were fed, that on 15 pence a day a man cannot fight on the ramparts and at the same time support a family. The people suffer and say, how to find the way out of these difficulties? It seems to us that there is only one answer to this question. We must recognize and loudly proclaim that everyone, whatever his grade in the old society, whether strong or weak, capable or incapable, has before everything the right to live, and that society is bound to share amongst all, without exception, the means of existence at its disposal. We must acknowledge this and proclaim it aloud and act up to it. It must be so contrived that from the first day of the revolution the worker shall know that a new era is opening before him, that henceforward none need crouch under the bridges with palaces hard by, none need fast in the midst of food, none need perish with cold near shops full of fruits, that all is for all, in practice as well as in theory, and that at last, for the first time in history, a revolution has been accomplished which considers the needs of the people before the schooling them in their duties. That is one of the most powerful pieces of revolutionary writing that I have ever read. I think Kropotkin really cuts right to the marrow of the situation. The people don't care about our theoretical bickering. They don't care about our sectarianism. The people care about being fed. They care about having shelter. That's the reason that they rise up to begin with. And we have to realize right now, especially those of us who are into theory and all this sort of thing, that yes, theory is important. That's why I'm making this video right now and reading the text of these theorists. But we have to remember that the people are the ones that are really driving this, and they need to have their material needs met. That's why I'm so excited to see the free store being built in the Target parking lot, the diapers being thrown out to the crowd, food and supplies being distributed from these reappropriated places, these corporate shop storefronts and that sort of thing. So let's just keep that in mind, and let's keep the people front and center and not get too highfalutin with our theoretical navel gazing in this very critical moment. So with that said, I'm now going to read an excerpt from the Mao Zedong Little Red Book of Mao's quotations. I know that a lot of anarchists in my audience are not fans of Mao. I know that because I recently quoted Mao in another video. Regardless of what you feel about Mao, I think these words are something we could all take to heart and listen to. So here is part 11 of the Little Red Book of Mao Zedong quotations, the mass line. The people and the people alone are the motive force in the making of world history. The masses are the real heroes, while we ourselves are often childish and ignorant, and without this understanding, it is impossible to acquire even the most rudimentary knowledge. The masses have boundless creative power. They can organize themselves and concentrate on places and branches of work where they can give full play to their energy. They can concentrate on production in breadth and depth and create more and more undertakings for their own well-being. The present upsurge of the peasant movement is a colossal event. In a very short time, in China's central, southern, and northern provinces, several 100 million peasants will rise like a mighty storm, like a hurricane, a force so swift and so violent that no power, however great, will be able to hold it back. They will smash all the trammels that bind them and rush forward along the road to liberation. They will sweep all the imperialists, warlords, corrupt officials, local tyrants, and evil gentry into their graves. Every revolutionary party and every revolutionary comrade will be put to the test, to be accepted or rejected as they decide. To link oneself with the masses, one must act in accordance with the needs and wishes of the masses. All work done for the masses must start from their needs and not from the desire of any individual, however well-intentioned. It often happens that objectively the masses need a certain change, but subjectively they are not yet conscious of the need, not yet willing or determined to make the change. In such cases, we should wait patiently. We should not make the change until, through our work, most of the masses have become conscious of the need and are willing and determined to carry it out. Otherwise, we shall isolate ourselves from the masses. Unless they are conscious and willing, any kind of work that requires their participation will turn out to be mere formality and will fail. There are two principles here. One is the actual needs of the masses rather than what we fancy they need, and the other is the wishes of the masses, who must make up their own minds instead of our making up their minds for them. If we try to go on the offensive when the masses are not yet awakened, that would be adventurism. If we insisted on leading the masses to do anything against their will, we would certainly fail. If we did not advance when the masses demand advance, that would be right opportunism. Commandism is wrong in any type of work because in overstepping the level of political consciousness of the masses and violating the principle of voluntary mass action, it reflects the disease of impetuosity. Our comrades must not assume that everything they themselves understand is understood by the masses. Take the ideas of the masses and concentrate them. Then go to the masses, persevere in the ideas, and carry them through so as to form correct ideas of leadership. Such is the basic method of leadership. That framework of mass line, I think, can be used from an anarchistic perspective, and I think there are a lot of important ideas that Mao came up with in relation to mass line, and that a lot of anarchists have kind of taken and run with in our own direction. I do think that Mao had some great ideas when it came to mass line and to getting the ideas that we put forward into our revolutionary praxis directly from the people. Find out what's relevant to them and help them figure out how to accomplish those goals. That's basically what mass line means. Let's go back to Vietnam again, and let's look at excerpt now from Vong Zap from the book People's War, People's Army. And Vong Zap was the great general of Vietnam who was absolutely instrumental in the defeat of the French and the United States of America in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And here is some writing from Vong Zap's book, People's War, People's Army. On December 19th, resistance broke out throughout the country. The next day, in the name of the party and of the government, President Ho Chi Minh called on the whole people to rise up to exterminate the enemy and save the country, to fight to the last drop of blood, and, whatever the cost, to refuse re-enslavement. At the time when hostilities became generalized throughout the country, what was the balance of forces? From the point of view of material, the enemy was stronger than us. Our troops were thus ordered to fight the enemy wherever they were garrisoned so as to weaken them and prevent them spreading out too rapidly, and thereafter, when conditions became unfavorable to us, to make the bulk of our forces fall back towards our rear in order to keep our forces intact with a view to a long-term resistance. The most glorious and most remarkable combats took place in Hanoi, where our troops succeeded in firmly holding a huge sector for 2 months before withdrawing from the capital unhurt. The whole Vietnamese people remained indissolubly united in a fight to the death in those days when the country was in danger. Our government continued appealing to the French government not to persist in their error and to reopen peaceful negotiations, but the latter, under the pretext of negotiation, demanded the disarming of our troops. We replied to the colonialists' obstinacy by intensifying the resistance. So Vong Zap was a general. A lot of his book reads like that. It's very, tactics, strategy. This happened in this area, in this region. It's very much like an account of the war in a lot of ways. But something that Vong Zap repeats again and again and again was this idea that they had to keep the fight moving forward. They could not be defeated. This was a big part of his strategy. If they felt like they were going to be defeated, they would fall back so that they could maintain their strength, rest and heal, and then get back into the fight. I think this is really important right now when we're looking at a situation where we have all these mass actions happening in so many different places. We don't want to burn out, but we also don't want to get into a situation where we have downtime. So, all I'm saying is if you're involved in these actions, it might not be a bad idea to pick up Vong Zap's book, People's War, People's Army. It's inspiring, and it might give you some ideas for how to keep that fight sustained. Because again, downtime for us is gear up time for the oppressors. And every day that we take off, they're going to arm up and strengthen their side. So let's try to keep things going in the spirit of the great general, Vong Zap. Next, we have another anarchist, and this is Nestor Makhno, who was a military commander in his own right in the Ukraine. This is an excerpt from On Revolutionary Discipline by Nestor Makhno. The Russian Revolution bore within it a content that was essentially anarchist in many respects. Had the anarchists been closely organized and had they in their actions abided strictly by a well-defined discipline, they would never have suffered the crushing defeat they did. But because the anarchists of all persuasions and tendencies did not represent, not even in their specific groups, a homogeneous collective with a disciplined line of action, they were unable to withstand the political and strategic scrutiny which revolutionary circumstances imposed upon them. Their disorganization reduced them to political impotence, giving birth to two categories of anarchist. One category was made up of those who hurled themselves into the systematic occupation of bourgeois homes, where they set up house and lived in comfort. These are the ones I term the anarchist tourists, who wandered around from town to town in hope of stumbling across a place to live for a time along the way, taking their leisure and hanging around as long as possible to live in comfort and ease. The other category was made up of those who severed all real connections with anarchism, although a few of them inside the USSR are now passing themselves off as the sole representatives of Russian anarchism, and who fairly swooped upon positions offered them by the Bolsheviks, even when the authorities were shooting anarchists who remained true to their revolutionary credentials by denouncing the Bolsheviks' treachery. In the light of these lamentable facts, it will be readily understood why I cannot remain indifferent to the nonchalance and negligence currently to be encountered in anarchist circles. It prevents them from establishing a collective, faced with which those people who grab at anarchism, or who are long dead to the cause of anarchism, or who just blabber on about anarchism, its unity and actions against the enemy, but who, when it comes to action, run from this unity, would be seen in a different light and would be pushed away to the place they belong. That is why I am speaking about an anarchist organization that rests upon the principle of comradely discipline. Such an organization would lead to the necessary coordination of all of the living forces of anarchism in the country and would help anarchists to take their rightful place in the great struggle of labor against capital. Only in this way can the idea of anarchism gain a mass following and not be impoverished. The only ones who could balk at such an organizational setup are the irresponsible, empty-headed chatterboxes who have until now almost dominated our movement through our own fault. Responsibility and discipline must not frighten the revolutionary. They are the traveling companions of the practice of social anarchism. It seems like not much has changed since Nestor Makhno wrote that, and I sure hope that I have not been an irresponsible, empty-headed chatterbox, although I know at times I have been. But no, Makhno is dead to rights, absolutely correct here. The discipline of our movement, it's just lacking now, just as much as it must have been in Nestor Makhno's days. And, we have to come together right now. We have to stop fighting about useless stuff. I don't want to name any names because I don't want to continue to the drama, which I consider to be part of this empty-headed chatterboxing. But, as I'm scrolling through my Twitter feed or going through Facebook, I'm seeing people who are arguing about this dirtbag versus woke scold stuff right now, while I'm also seeing live stream feeds of people doing amazing real revolutionary action on the streets. And I just have to wonder, where are your priorities right now? Why are we even talking about this useless YouTube-oriented niche drama when we have real work to be done right now? Please, let's have some discipline. Let's try to organize and find some unity, as we are able. And let's organize and produce action. Let's donate. Let's signal boost. Let's do what needs to be done to support these people who are now on the front line of revolutionary activity. And now we're going to move into some other figures who I think we all need to be looking back and studying right now. First would be Fred Hampton, who was a revolutionary socialist and the chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. He was an amazing speaker and thinker and leader. And I'm just going to play some excerpts from Fred Hampton now. And I think that when you hear Fred Hampton speak, you'll understand why I believe he is one of the most important voices of the 20th century and somebody we definitely need to be listening to today. Here is Fred Hampton.
We've got a new state's attorney, you see. And he said already what he thought about people that had different political beliefs than he had. His speeches sound somewhat like those of Hitler. And we know why he wants to see Fred Hampton put in jail. Why do I have a lot of arrests? Because of harassment. Why is that harassment? Because the people that harass me have set up a problem that made me disagree with them violently. And they set up this problem in order to exploit me and other people like me. And why they want to get rid of me? Because I'm saying something that might wake up some other exploited people and some other oppressed people. And if all these people ever get together, then these pigs that are exploiting us, we'll be able to run them into the lake. That's why they want to get rid of us. And it's just, it's sort of like a primary thing with me. I'm the first move that they'll make. I'm a part of the organization. It will be the first organization they'll move on because I happen to be a part of the organization, the Black Panther Party. That is the only organization, in fact, that has came out and stood up loud and clear and said that we don't care what anybody says, whether they have guns or not and badges or 18 uniforms. If whenever they step outside the bounds of legality into the bounds of illegality, then we'll blow their brains out if they're bothering the people. Right on. And what makes them mad about that? They're constantly bothering the people. Anybody that's out there for the protection of the people happens to be in direct conflict with them. What makes them mad about it? What makes them mad about it is that they have black people and white poor people and red poor people and Puerto Rican poor people and Latin American Puerto Rican people of poor people of all descents. They had them caught up in movements based on racism when the Black Panther Party stood up and said that we don't care what anybody says. We don't think you fight fire with fire best. We think you fight fire with water best. We're going to fight racism, not with racism, but we're going to fight with solidarity. We said we're not going to fight capitalism with black capitalism, but we're going to fight it with socialism. We stood up and said we're not going to fight reactionary pigs and reactionary state's attorneys like this and reactionary state's attorneys like Hanrahan with any other reactions on our part. We're going to fight their reactions where all of us people are getting together and have an international proletarian revolution. Right on. Right on. And that's saying all power to the people. Right on. That's saying that no matter what color you are, there's only two classes. And that's saying there's a class over here and there's a class over there. And the reason that this class over here has never did anything to get this class off its back because this is lower, this is upper. This is the oppressed, this is the oppressor. This is the exploited, this is the exploiter. And these people in this class have divided themselves. They say, I'm black and I hate white people. I'm white and I hate black people. I'm Latin American and I hate hillbillies. I'm hillbilly and I hate Indians. So we fight amongst each other. And you've heard the testimony of pigs here. You got pigs of all colors, you know that. You got pigs that are white, you got pigs that are black, you even got pigs that are black and white. Propagating the same type of madness that this buffoon Hanrahan would be propagating if he were here himself. And why? Because they want to keep you to believing that I'm your enemy, and that everybody else that's black and that wears a lot of hair on his head and hair on his face, they want to keep you thinking that he's your enemy. Why? Because if ever you would disregard him and overlook him just for a minute and throw away that question of racism and start into dealing with a little logic, then there would be no one else you could attack other than Hanrahan, other than Daley, and other than Tricky Dicky Nixon.
Now, sadly, in 1969, Fred Hampton was assassinated in his sleep, in his bed at home, by the FBI and the Chicago Police Department. So We did lose a very important figure. I always wonder what might have happened if Fred Hampton had lived longer. But of course, like many revolutionaries, his life was snuffed out far too early. But his words will live on for a long, long time to come. Next, let's move on to Malcolm X. And I'm sure you're familiar with Malcolm X. In my opinion, Malcolm X was a great thinker. He had some amazing ideas, and he said a lot of things that we need to hear, especially now. So here's Malcolm X on police brutality.
The controlled press, the white press, inflames the white public against Negroes. The police are able to use it to paint the Negro community as a criminal element. The police are able to use the press to make the white public think that 90% or 99% of the Negroes in the Negro community are criminals. And once the white public is convinced that most of the Negro community is a criminal element, then this automatically paves the way for the police to move into the Negro community, exercising Gestapo tactics, stopping any black man who is on the sidewalk, whether he is guilty or whether he is innocent, whether he is well dressed or whether he is poorly dressed, whether he is educated or whether he is dumb, whether he's a Christian or whether he's a Muslim. As long as he is black and a member of the Negro community, the white public thinks that the white policeman is justified in going in there and trampling on that man's civil rights and on that man's human rights. Once the police have convinced the white public that the so-called Negro community is a criminal element, they can go in and question, brutalize, murder unarmed, innocent Negroes, and the white public is gullible enough to back them up. This makes the Negro community a police state. This makes the Negro neighborhood a police state. It's the most heavily patrolled. It has more police in it than any other neighborhood, yet it has more crime in it than any other neighborhood. How can you have more cops and more crime? Why? It shows you that the cops must be in cahoots with the criminals.
Next, let's take a look at another great black revolutionary figure from the 1960s and 70s. This is Huey P. Newton, who was one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party, an amazing organizer, amazing strategist, and a great orator. So let's listen to what Huey P. Newton has to say in this speech, which I think, could have been recorded yesterday. It's so relevant. So here's Huey Newton.
The vision of the civil rights movement is to achieve goals which have been altered by 200 years of change. Thus, the civil rights movement and similar movements have produced no foundation for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They have produced humiliating programs of welfare and unemployment compensation, programs with sufficient form to deceive the people, but with insufficient substance to change the fundamental distribution of power and resources in this country. Moreover, while the movements attempt to get minorities into the system, we note that the government continues its pattern of practice which contradicts its democratic rhetoric. We recognize now that we see history repeating itself, but on an international as well as a national scale. The relentless drive for profit led this nation to colonize, oppress, and exploit its minorities. This profit drive took this nation from democratic capitalism and underdevelopment to bureaucratic capitalism and overdevelopment. Now we see that the small ruling circle continues its profit drive by oppressing and exploiting the people of the world. Throughout the world, the proletariat is crushed so that the profits of the American industry can continue to flow. Throughout the world, the freedom struggle of oppressed people are opposed by this government because they are a threat to the bureaucratic capitalism of the United States of America. We gather here to let it be known at home and abroad that a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness has in its maturity become an imperialistic power dedicated to death, oppression, and the pursuit of profits. We will not be deceived by so many of our fellow men. We will not be blinded by small changes in form which lack any change in substance of the imperialist expansion. Our suffering has been too long, our sacrifices have been too great, and our human dignity is too strong for us to be prudent any longer.
Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to find clips of Huey Newton and Fred Hampton speaking. They spoke a lot, but I'm going to keep doing research and trying to find more raw footage because, for me to read the text transcriptions of the speeches that these figures made, it's just not as powerful as getting that visceral experience as you just heard. So I'm going to wrap things up now with somebody who just spoke basically today while I'm recording this. This is Cornell West, a man who considers himself to be a socialist. A non-Marxist socialist is what he calls himself. Anyway, whether you agree with everything he's ever said or not, I think this 5-minute clip from CNN is amazing. I can't believe that it aired uninterrupted on national television. And the whole time he's speaking, not only do I want you to pay attention to the way that he crystallizes the situation so perfectly, but I also want you to imagine how desperately the showrunners, the producers at CNN in the studio must have wanted to cut away from him while he was speaking, because he was dropping some incredible truth bombs there on the national syndicated airwaves. But here is Cornell West speaking on CNN basically now.
It is a lynching at the highest level. Nobody can deny it. And I thank God that we have people in the streets. Can you imagine this kind of lynching taking place and people are indifferent? People don't care? People are callous? You have just a few people out there with signs. I recall the moments in which during the Reagan years, there was a few of us out there. In the 60s, you had masses out there. Now you've got a younger generation of all of these different colors and genders and sexual orientations saying, we won't take it any longer. But you know what's sad about it though, brother? At the deepest level? It looks as if the system cannot reform itself. We've tried black faces in high places. Too often our black politicians, professional class, middle class, become too accommodated to the capitalist economy, too accommodated to the militarized nation state, too accommodated to the market-driven culture tied with celebrity status, power, fame, all of that superficial stuff that means so much to so many fellow citizens. And what happens? What happens is we got a neo-fascist gangster in the White House who really doesn't care for the most part. You got a neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party that is now in the driver's seat with the collapse of Brother Bernie, and they don't really know what to do because all they want is show more black faces, show more black faces. But oftentimes these black faces are losing legitimacy too, because the Black Lives Matter movement emerged under a black president, black attorney general, and black Homeland Security, and they couldn't deliver. You see? So that when you talk about the masses of black people, the precious poor and working class black people, poor and working class brown, red, yellow, whatever color, they're the ones who are left out and they feel so thoroughly powerless, helpless, hopeless, then you get rebellion. And we've reached the point now, it's a choice between nonviolent revolution. And by revolution, what I mean is the democratic sharing of power, resources, wealth, and respect. If we don't get that kind of sharing, you're going to get more violent explosions. Now, the sad thing is, at this neo-fascist moment in the White House, you've got some neo-fascist brothers and sisters out there who are already armed. They show up there at the U.S. Capitol, and they don't get arrested. They don't get put down.
Well, that's
the president.
That's the extraordinary thing.
You see what I mean?
You have these white weekend warriors showing up as if they're former special forces ops when they're not. Busting into the State House, and the president praises those people, and yet everybody else is a thug to the president. He quotes, a white sheriff from the South in, I guess it was 67 or maybe 68. I mean, if you wrote that in a movie, people would say there's no way the president of the United States would quote a Southern sheriff on the night that a great city in this country is seeing, people in the streets. I mean,
that's exactly right.
But
keep in mind, though, brother,
also, I guess
he
the
is
thing
being true to himself. He's being true to himself. He's saying what he really feels in his soul. You see what I mean? But see, we have to recognize too, because I know, like Tupac Shakur, I got some thug in me. I know I've got some gangster in me, and as a Christian, I got to fight it every day. What does that mean? That means we have to call people who they are. A neo-fascist thug in the White House calls my brothers and sisters in the street thugs. So that then the question becomes, how do we keep alive moral, spiritual standards, keep alive, stand in contact with the humanity of all of us across the board, but recognizing we're living in a moment of massive economic, what is capitalist economy? Failure when it comes to delivering the needs. The nation state, failure to protect. Critical criminal justice system, failure to be fair, you see. And the only response we have is Samuel Beckett, my brother. Try again, fail better. Try again, fail better. Because white supremacy is going to be around for a long time. Don't get surprised if this happens again. Try again. You know the great moment in. Try again, fail better. That's the blues line of our Irish brother. But the question is, we must fight. Even in a moment in which we have a failed social experiment, we must fight, and we must have an anti-fascist coalition against what's going on in the White House Republican Party. We have to tell the truth about the milquetoast, cowardly activity too often that we see among a neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party, and we must be critical of ourselves in terms of keeping alive the highest moral and spiritual standards of Martin Luther King Jr. and Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker. And you see it at work in the soul of Brother George Floyd's family.
Dr. Cornell West, I appreciate your time tonight, and
love you though, brother. You stay strong, man.
Thank you.
So that was pretty incredible. I thought that was just interesting that was on CNN while the riots are happening. I just, some strange stuff is happening, but I am cautiously optimistic right now. I do hope that things can continue. I do want to echo what Che Guevara said, not one step back. I do want to point out that, when Che Guevara, Vong Zap, when Nestor Makhno, when all these people kind of have the same recurring theme that we have to keep pushing forward. We can't let the momentum drop. We have to have discipline. We have to carry forward with the people, alongside the people. I think we need to pay attention to what those great historical people had to say. I think we need to look at the example of the Black Panthers and the powerful militant movement that they built. It was so powerful that the entire federal government of the United States had to mount a dedicated reprisal, a multi-year long attack and warfare on the Black Panther Party because their methods of revolution were so successful and their strategies were so effective. So that's really all I had to say for now. I hope you all stay safe. I hope that you all support this activity as you are able. There are many mutual aid groups that need your donations right now. So if you have a couple of dollars to give, I'll put a lot of links in the description. People need your help in Minnesota, Los Angeles, Oakland, all over the country of the United States of America. Keep an eye on what's happening in Japan with the police protests there. Things could get ugly there. And of course, we still have actions all over the rest of the world in Brazil. Things are happening in Hong Kong. I know a couple of anarchists and communists in Hong Kong. So I just hope that wherever you are, you stay safe, stay active, stay alert. Try to social distance, but obviously if you're out there in the streets, it's going to be difficult. Wear your mask. Don't just wear it for COVID-19. Also wear it for the cameras. Don't do anything illegal. Never do anything that would violate the law or the terms of service of YouTube and Google Incorporated. But please donate money to those mutual aid services as you can. I'm American Johnson. It's exciting to be alive right now. It's scary, but together, I believe we can build a better world. Take care of each other.
This is a coordinated activity happening across this nation. And so we are in a state of emergency. Black people are dying in a state of emergency. We cannot look at this as an isolated incident. The reason why buildings are burning are not just for our brother George Floyd. They're burning down because people here in Minnesota are saying to people in New York, to people in California, to people in Memphis, to people all across this nation, enough is enough. Yes. And we are not responsible for the mental illness that has been inflicted upon our people by the American government, institutions, and those people who are in positions of power. I don't give a damn if they burn down Target, because Target should be on the streets with us, calling for the justice that our people deserve. Where was AutoZone at the time when Philando Castile was shot in a car, which is what they actually represent? Where were they? So if you are not coming to the people's defense, then don't challenge us when young people and other people who are frustrated and instigated by the people you pay. You are paying instigators to be among our people out there throwing rocks, breaking windows, and burning down buildings. And so young people are responding to that. They are enraged, and there's an easy way to stop it. Arrest the cops. Charge the cops. Charge all the cops. Not just some of them, not just here in Minneapolis. Charge them in every city across America where our people are being murdered. Charge them everywhere. That's the bottom line. Charge the cops. Do your job. Do what you say this country is supposed to be about, the land of the free for all. It has not been free for black people, and we are tired. Don't talk to us about looting. Y'all are the looters. America has looted black people. America looted the Native Americans when they first came here. So looting is what you do. We learned it from you. We learned violence from you. We learned violence from you. The violence was what we learned from you. So if you want us to do better, then damn it, you do better.